Welcome to Brewsers, a podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I'm your host, Rody John, and today we speak to Danielle Mann with River Green Cocktails. We talk all about how a physician started a gin cocktail company during the pandemic, the whole liquor industry in general, and how they're on tap at Slugger Field in Louisville. This is such a fun conversation. We do go all over the place, but it is such a good conversation to have about the industry, what's going on, how she got even started in this. And River Green Cocktails is amazing. So if you can find them, please do. Obviously, go to their website. You can find them there. And if you want, head on over to Louisville. You can get them right on the tap at Slugger Field. But make sure while you're doing all that, sign up for our newsletter. It comes out twice a week. You get even more information about our guests. You get fun facts, and you get to find out what's happening with your favorite podcast, all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. So without further ado, here is Danielle Mann with River Green Cocktails. I would like to welcome to the show Danielle Mann with River Green Cocktails. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, John.
Thanks for coming on. Now, for people listening, kind of paint us a word picture. Where are you at? What's going on around you?
You mean my location right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm out of Louisville, Kentucky, and I was going to say today it is nice and sunny day and about 45 degrees.
I'm here in
but
North
it's a beautiful day.
45 is not nice. That is too cold.
I imagine, but it's pretty good for December for us, so I'll take it.
That's fair enough. That's true. Now, let's go all the way back in time. What is your earliest memory of alcohol?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that before. I was probably a smallish child. I would say probably middle school. My dad was in the wine business. He worked for a distributor. Yes, E&J Gallo. And
yes.
Yes, and wine was a big thing in our house. Wine with dinner was very much a thing. So my dad was teaching me about wine at a very early age.
It is crazy to see how big Gallo has gotten over the years. Before we, started this officially, we were talking about the distribution side and the wine world. The fact that they have just gotten like almost constellation level big is just off there, just one wine. Like it's not like they have a bunch. Obviously, they've gotten some and taken away some others, but it's mainly just been Gallo wine that has just been so big and so powerful for them all these years.
Yes, I think that there's probably a certain age group that very much knows E&J Gallo wine, right? Mm-hmm. And then, too, it's interesting to me because now that I'm in this world of alcohol, seeing, the umbrella of E&J Gallo and seeing other brands that they have purchased, because you just I don't really hear about, even in my world of alcohol, I don't hear E&J Gallo like I hear about Campari or Sazerac or Diageo, but E&J Gallo is huge. You're right. They're huge.
Yeah, it's almost like generationally huge. It's not like they were recently big, which is, which I never thought to think about that when it comes to the wine and alcohol world, but that they are generationally big. They're just, they're not one of those new big people. Yeah, how funny.
Yeah, I know, right?
Now, I want to fast forward to 2020, which was such a fun year for everybody, but it was an extra fun year for you. So you started this company while you were not only a physician and a mom. How did the idea for starting Green River Cocktails begin?
Well, it's River Green Cocktails. Not Green River.
Yeah, River Green. I have it written down that way. I don't know why I said Green River.
Well, and the reason that I'm even correcting you is because there is actually a bourbon from Louisville, or it's actually from Owensboro, Kentucky, named Green River. So people do it all the time. And, of course, we came out around the same time. So they probably get River Green and I get Green River. But, yes, COVID. So I'm an OBGYN physician. And I have 3 boys aged 15, 13, and 10. And so busy life like anyone who works and is a parent. And COVID was one of these times in my life where I had never had that much free time, or at least I couldn't remember when I had that much free time. And I was only allowed to work every other week, and I was only allowed to work about 3 hours every other week, 3 hours a day. And so what do you do with all that time? I guess you daydream and, fulfill hobbies that you've always wanted to do. Like I made a garden and things like that. But I also was making cocktails like a lot of people were doing. And and honestly, I will tell you, John, I kind of always had the entrepreneurial itch. This is the first time I've actually pulled the trigger, but I've had a couple things that like I think back and I'm like, did this come out of nowhere? No, there were a couple other things that I almost started. I kind of daydreamed about. I kind of researched it a little bit, but I never fully pulled the trigger. And then, so I wasn't making cocktails thinking, oh, I should, make a cocktail and try to sell it. But it just kind of happened organically. I was, it's funny because I'm really not a cocktail drinker. I am a wine drinker. As I said, I grew up on wine, so I'm a wine drinker. But somebody had introduced me to slow gin that summer. Have you ever had slow gin?
Yeah, they're fantastic.
So, a lot of people have never had slow gin before. And so, it's a gin that's infused with slow berries. And so it has a beautiful color and it tastes really good. It almost tastes to me like raisins of some sort, but I don't like sweet drinks. And so it was too sweet for me. So I started cutting it with soda water and a little bit of lemon juice. And it was so tasty. And anybody who came over during those COVID times, I would give it to them and they're like, this is the best drink I've ever had. And so that's kind of what got me thinking. I started slowly just kind of researching gin and researching, canned cocktails. And that's what ended up kind of taking me down that train of thought because I noticed that the ready-to-drink market was soaring. And specifically spirits at that time were beginning to gain some traction above the malt-based cocktails like White Claw and Truly. And when I went to the liquor store, I noticed nobody was doing gin. I was like, nobody. I mean, I saw a couple G&Ts, like gin and tonics, but I was not seeing like gin cocktails. And so when I started researching gin, I was seeing that gin is seeing its own little resurgence or renaissance. And so that's kind of what started me thinking, like maybe I should put a gin cocktail in a can. And I did.
Well, you said you're not really a cocktail person. How did you get the recipes to kind of start putting those together?
Well, my first idea was to make this slow gin cocktail that I was making in my kitchen. But slow berries are only grown in the United Kingdom. So I got some dehydrated slow berries and I was going to make my own slow berry gin. But I was like, you can't do a business off this. It's going to take forever. It takes like 6 months to even make the slow berry gin to infuse it. And I don't have good access to slow berries. So I started looking up, when I was researching gin, I was like, oh my gosh, there's all these like beautiful Prohibition era cocktails that are already made. I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. So I picked 3 that I thought, were a good representation of gin cocktails. I have a bee's knees, which is made with lemon juice and locally sourced honey that I get from a bee farmer in Kentucky. I have a gimlet with lime juice and organic cane sugar. And then I have a Greyhound, which is with Rio Red grapefruit juice. And so those are the 3 that I made. So to answer your question, long-windedly, I made them in my kitchen, trial and error. I tried a lot of cocktails that summer. So just kind of starting with a basic recipe and adding a little more lemon, adding a little less honey or just figuring out what profile tasted the best. And that's how it started and that's how I landed on my 3 SKUs.
Very interesting. Yeah, and because gin, I think, really wasn't, I mean, like you said, it's having its resurgence now, but it wasn't, for a long time, it was that section, especially if you're just buying gin. If you go to the liquor store now, the section's bigger, but it was so small for the longest time that you really only had a few, and some of them were too piney or it was too juniper-y for some people, and like you literally had to mix it with something else to really get a better taste that was better for a lot of people's palate, as opposed to, vodka is kind of like, unless it's flavored, it's kind of like the tofu of liquor, where you can mix it with anything and it kind of takes over, or it takes on that flavor. But,
100%.
whiskey and bourbon whiskey, bourbon have their taste, tequila has their taste. But gin is definitely one of those that for a lot of people had to, really get used to it and had the right mixture. So I'm glad that you were able to take one that was kind of like the underdog and make it bigger and better.
Well, and I agree with you with everything that you're saying. I do, during COVID, gin had a surge because a lot of people were making cocktails, and gin is, it's meant to be made into a cocktail. I don't know anyone who just like sips on gin. It's the same thing with vodka. Many people don't like sip on vodka, whereas you would, your bourbon and your whiskey, you'll take neat. But a lot of people were using gin, and honestly, I'll have to thank Ryan Reynolds for Aviation Gin, because I do think he helped to, put gin a little more on the map, especially for American gin. People are like, oh, Ryan Reynolds likes it, maybe I'll try some gin. So, I think that kind of was all the perfect storm. And now, I mean, I don't know how it is in Texas, but it certainly is here, and I have a feeling it's kind of national. It's like there's a big trend towards this, like, speakeasy type of vibe. We have a lot of speakeasies here, and so now we actually even have a gin lounge, and gin lounges are popping up. And because it kind of goes with that whole speakeasy prohibition era vibe. And so now, you go to a nice restaurant, you're going to be hard pressed not to find several cocktails on there that are not made with gin. And I just don't, that's not the way it was several years ago. And so there definitely is this shift. It's slower. I know that. Vodka and tequila are still the winners in the RTD category. But, you got to be the first to market. So I'm betting on gin, and I'm betting on real ingredients. And so I think that everything is kind of poised for that. And our cocktails are cocktails. Like, we're at a 12% ABV, and we're a little bit stronger. And that was a little bit of a turn, because during COVID, everyone was kind of touting the 4 to 5%, less alcohol, which I always say there's a time and a place for a smaller ABV, and there's a time and a place for a larger ABV. And people haven't changed that much. Sometimes people want a stiffer cocktail, and I think gin lends itself to being a higher ABV drink. It's just the style of the alcohol. It's not something you're going to be pounding. It's something you're going to be sipping.
Yeah, I saw that your ABV was higher, and I was so happy, because the RTD world is just, it's kind of, the most I've seen is 7%, which I still think, like you said, you're just going to keep pounding them over and over again, because a lot of times you're not, for some people who want to drink, well, obviously they want something that tastes good, but they want to feel it as well. And if you're not, feeling it, then you're just going to have to continue to consume them. So like yours, I'm glad that you said that you were sipping them, because, pounding at 12% or good luck, doing a lot of things after that, because you're going to be feeling it, and that's not a bad thing.
No, absolutely. I had some guy tell me, he's like, oh, I love these drinks. They take you to the promised land really quick. and I was like, and I think that that's just being really honest. Like, some people, you come home after work and you want a cocktail. You don't want to drink, 4 carbonated RTDs.
Right.
Whereas, ours are lightly carbonated, but, it doesn't have that, like, carbonated, heavy, bloaty feeling on your abdomen, and, so yeah, I've been betting on gin, and I've been betting on high ABV, and I do think that things are trending towards that. We've had these low ABVs, but the newest research that I saw that came out was saying